it is much easier to automate than it is to create traction. It's really weird to be in a company where your product is... It's not like you can go back and say, oh, and then revert that decision. There is no decision to revert. Crisis is where leaders are made or get destroyed. There was like 10 competitors pre-COVID and literally 2 after.
Good morning, JC. Thanks for having us.
Good morning. Thank you.
So I was thinking that today it's like March 5th, 2025. So it's almost 5 years from COVID. And I guess that COVID was probably like an after and before for an inflection point for TravelPerk. Tell us a bit more about that. What did the company look like before COVID? And what did COVID trigger for you guys, for TravelPerk?
So March 2020 is... So we're on a really good run. Like we were basically created in 2016, starting really selling in 2017. 2017 to 2020, we're basically on this trajectory between 0 to about 20 million ARR. We're building the company. Things are going well.
Pure ARR? Were you already like subscription-based?
No, actually, that's a very good point. So we use ARR to the extent that it works like if it is a subscription because we have very high retention, but it is fundamentally usage-based. Even today, the subscription part is a tiny part of our business, about 3-4% of our revenue. Everything else is usage-based, but the retention makes sense because exactly it's SaaS-like, and it has become quite a trend now that you see in quite a few companies like Twilio and AWS of this style. So yeah, we were getting into this journey. Everything is going well, and then obviously the sky fall on us with COVID because that's it. Yeah, I mean, it's really weird to be in a company where your product is illegal. Exactly, it's bizarre, and you didn't do anything wrong. Yeah. That is the almost craziest unfairness of all of this. Is you don't know when it's going to finish, and you didn't do anything wrong. So it's not like you can go back and say, oh, I can revert that decision. There is no decision to revert. So you just have to think, who am I? Who do I want to be? No, actually, the first thing you look at is your cash balance. You're like, okay, can I make payroll? Yeah. For how long is left? For how long can I make payroll? Okay, once you do that, then you go into a sequence of decision-making process of thinking, okay, short term, I'm okay.
Did you have enough cash back then?
Yeah, we had enough cash. That was part luck, part on purpose. So luck, of course, because we raised money late 2019, and we couldn't time it. Where it's a bit on purpose is, and it's still the case today, is we have the approach that we're not really the type of company that will go around and see all the investors and say, we are raising money now. That's not really how we work. Is we constantly have a pool of people and investors we would like to work with one day. And if something good comes, then we review it.
And you nurture the relationship over time.
Exactly. Which meant that we sometimes take investment whether or not we need it right now. If we think it's the right investment at the right valuation, we'll take it. We don't do this kind of really like roadshow, let's go to the valley and let's go through everybody. So anyway, to go back to this was the first thing. And then we had to decide what do we do short term and then what do we do long term.
And what was it? The short term and the long term?
So the short term was... So the first short term was, like everybody company, let's make sure all our employees are safe. That was the first thing. The second thing that was short term is let's help our customers because we do travel. So we had a lot of people stuck in different places in the world. And our duty was to help them and bringing them back to their home and family. So that was basically the month of March. When we realized in April that it was not going to go away in the next 1 or 2 months, then we had to make a choice. And the choice was, do we follow what a lot of travel companies did, which basically most travel companies at the time did one of the two things. Either they pivoted to another business. So a lot of them moved into fintech move into expense management, and or they laid off 80% of their team. It's easy to say now that these two options were not the good one, because that is the most interesting thing about TravelPerk is you will have asked people in 2018 who will win the business travel market. And now it's very clearly us and Navan. We are like 10 times bigger than number 3. That's not the two names you will have heard. You will have heard probably Lola, which was backed by the founder of Kayak. You will have heard Next Travel, which was a Y Combinator company. Both companies don't exist anymore. And both companies don't exist anymore because they did not manage well the COVID period. Like crisis is where leaders are made or get destroyed. And they didn't manage it, and that's why they don't exist on the other side of it. Yeah. But it was really interesting because there was like 10 competitors pre-COVID and literally 2 after.
What's the best decisions you think you guys made at that point?
I think there were a few of them. So I think the first one is we decided to not pivot, not lay off. And what that meant was while everybody was doing something else, we keep on acquiring customer and we keep on developing the business. So then the second question is like, wow, you acquire customer when nobody travel? It was a bit more subtle because once you were past July 2020, if you were essential worker, you will travel. So the people who install power grid, supermarket, manufacturing, where they need to travel to deliver their job, these people had the right to travel. And because the entire business travel market decided to put themselves on hold, they had nobody to serve them. And we're like, hello, how are you guys? That's good. Yeah. And that meant all these customers, they were there after the crisis. So you have to reinvent yourself though when you do that, because we were selling mainly to tech and consulting, and suddenly we are selling to a 200-year-old manufacturing company. So you kind of have to reinvent a bit your go. Completely different need, completely different go-to-market. So you have to reinvent yourself a bit. So I think that was one side. The second side is, which was really what propelled us to be literally at 100 million on the other side of COVID, is in 2020, when people started to travel again. So first of all, most of the markets thought that behavior will change. Behavior have not changed. 2024 was the biggest year of business travel in history, bigger than 2019. So for whatever has been said about business travel will be cut by 50%, hello Bill Gates, it was just inaccurate. But what that meant is all the people who believe that, the customer in 2022. So we had basically 2 phases of growth during this period. We have the first one where we acquire customer when everybody was hibernating. And then we had this actually even bigger phase of growth in 2022, specifically when the normal customer went back to traveling because traveling was available. They turned around to their business travel partner, and the business travel partner is nowhere to be found because they have fired everybody. So they can't deliver customer support, the platform doesn't work, and the travel partner, a lot of these companies are like, yeah, don't worry, we'll get back on track. But we were ready. So then we had this huge influx of customers in 2022. And you can really see it in the cohort part of it. So these 2 decisions is what really propel us. It's like managing the crisis, but actually even more importantly, managing the rebound post-crisis.
But then that's very interesting. It's you need to catch the right trend, right? So you don't know exactly the trend is coming. I mean, you could have been completely wrong.
Completely. If it lasts 2 more years, I don't think we survive it.
But then you are then sitting at some point in the middle of COVID with your whole exec team discussing, we do believe that at some point people are going to travel again. That's a discussion that you really have, and when that makes you decide, that's amazing. Like that happened.
Yeah, it's like we had actually this, we call it the war cabinet. So it was...
Are you planning, if this happens, we do that, if
yep.
this that?
Yeah, we had that. But it's the moment where we decided to double down, because what we did is we look at upside downside. Is a lot of these companies, especially that pivoted to other sector, they went nowhere because they had zero competency to do that. Like some of them, especially a lot of the travel one went to expense management or card. Like Lola was unfortunately an example of that. But why do you think you're going to succeed? There are people who do expense management really well. There are people who do card really well. They've been doing it for years. You do travel. If you pivot to that, you have no reason to develop it. Yeah, what's your right to play? Why would you develop a better product than the other one? And we're like, no, that's the only thing we know how to do. Like, we have to double down on it. We believe we have the best people. And I think the one thing that was important is because we had this approach where we really trusted our people, they gave back 100 times to us. Like people work super hard. They were very, very receptive to changes. Like if we will have tried to change all our go-to-market from targeting consulting and tech to targeting manufacturing company in a normal time, that would probably have been really hard. But in that type of period,
There was no incentive.
almost everything goes. It's like, hey guys, we're going to completely change it. People are like, yeah, that's good. Let's do it.
Yeah. And also, I mean, in the past few years, or even perhaps triggered from COVID, I mean, you guys went into a big automation and efficiency phase. I think you all have been very vocal about it. Abby has been vocal about it in Kinebic, in the reports they talk about this. Explain a bit more when you guys have been doing and why. I mean, what triggered that? Was it COVID?
Take one notes here. Right? This is very interesting.
Why? What triggered the automation and efficiency? How did you guys do it?
Let me tell you a little like timeline and funny story about that. So we finished COVID basically in 2022. So at that point, we're just on the ride. We're like, oh, finally, this is amazing. And then all the VC market crash. I'm sure you remember that one. And then suddenly the VC market is like, no, growth at all costs is gone. You need incredible unit economics. And we're like, really?
We're growing finally.
Hey, really? Because the thing is, we grew super fast. Yeah. So our unit economics suffered a little bit, both on cost to serve and on cost of acquisition. And we're like, really, guys? Like, we went through COVID. Like, we're not like all the other tech company that had an amazing time through COVID. We didn't really have an amazing time. It's
the scar.
Yeah, look at the scar. Look at my wrinkles. Like, it's unfair. But like, joke aside. And so we were like, okay, what can we do? Okay, we're going to reinvent ourselves. So we spent literally all of 2023 just working on automation. And in our case, specifically to drive cost to serve down. Because the key in our business, so it's quite specific to business travel, is we support the traveler. TravelPerk is both a SaaS platform and a marketplace, fundamentally. It's like there is a SaaS component to our product, classic with user approval, reporting, what you see in a lot of companies. But you also have a marketplace. Like we buy and sell every single airplane ticket, every single hotel room. And as a consequence, we need to support the travelers. We're not just a platform and then you go talk to British Airways. It's like, no, you have a problem with British Airways or with your Marriott hotel, you talk to us. So the amount of support we have to deliver is enormous. And so this is where automation makes the most sense.
It was human support.
It was human support, exactly, 100%. So you want to modify your trip, you want to cancel your trip, you want to add a night, you want to add a breakfast, all human support.
You had it outsourced to?
So we had it
country?
Partly in-source, partly outsource. But even if it's outsourced, it's not free. Like, I think sometimes people think like outsource is free. Outsource is not free. Like, I mean, especially if you want to deliver great service.
Control. So you...
Yeah, if you want to deliver great service, you need to pay people well. And so that, and on top of it, travelers were not even really happy about it. Because as a traveler, I much rather go on a platform and modify the trip by myself rather than send an email to somebody, wait, and then get an answer. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So we went on this journey of first identifying the problem, which is, okay, what's the problem to be solved? Can this problem to be solved by automation? And what kind of automation do we need to solve the problem? And so we literally went through every single contact reason from the most frequent to the less frequent. And then we divided the problem into basically two categories. The first category is it can be fully automated from end to end. And that was typically just automation, RPA, and so on.
Because this is prior to the boom in LLMs, right?
Exactly. And the second category, because we started to already work on LLM for all the cases where, for one reason or another, we couldn't fully automate it, but we could make the agent 20 times more effective.
A human agent.
The human agent. To give you a very simple example, we receive about 10,000 emails a day from suppliers about trips from our traveler. So what I mean by that is you're going on a trip and for whatever reason, I don't mean to just an example, British Airways decide to move their flight by 45 minutes. That's what's called involuntary changes, which is a funny euphemism. I always find that, but anyway. We need to decide what we do with this information. If it's a small change, we might not even inform you. If it's like a 5-minute change, it's like, who cares? If it's a 45-minute change, we will inform you, but we're probably not going to give you an alternative to change your flight because 45-minute change is probably okay for you. You're kind of okay for that. But if, for example, they fully cancel your flight and we just tell you, hey, they have fully canceled your flight, you will be like, okay, thank you, but what are you going to do for me? So we used to have a team of literally 50 people whose job was to read the email, decide in which of the 3 categories it goes, and then propose a suggested approach. What we could do with LLM was have LLM read the email, categorize them into the 3 categories, and if it is in category 1 or in category 2, it's fully automated. Because LLM can also write the email to you and say, hello, your flight has been delayed by 45 minutes. We have not made any other decision on your flight. If you want to contact us, contact us. And only in the third case where that requires a human come. Because it's like, okay, your flight is canceled. Now I need to think about the context. I'm going to say, okay, is there any other alternative available? What type of traveler do you have? And that meant a team of 50 people went to a team of 5 people because only that case was still handled. And that's what we went through. And that's how we improve our gross margin from 40 to over 70%, which was unheard of in travel. Like the biggest problem of travel was gross margin. Like this is why no business travel software was really successful before, is because it was bad gross margin. It was not software gross margin. And we managed through automation to make it look from a unit economic standpoint like a normal software gross margin in 70-80% gross margin.
So then trying to break it down so that the audience was looking to do the same thing and loves the idea of improving the gross margin. So you go to every single process you have in the company, from the most used one to the less one. You try to then define what is the workflow that is happening inside this process, right? What is the input of data, what's going on? What is the output, desired output? Once you have all of those listed, you start thinking, can I automate that? If I can, I do it. And then I create the interface for the user to do it if possible, right? So
yes,
that's the thinking process behind all of it. And you go one by one doing that with RPAs. So would that have changed now? I mean, if that happened 3-4 years ago, if you had to do this today, would you change that approach, or do you think it's the same system?
Oh, no, we will change.
One by one.
So, no, the approach will be the same. What is different is, and it is actually the reality of what we do, is there were certain processes. So actually, there is one more thing in the process is when you go through this ranking, you evaluate. So our metric was FTE, full-time employee equivalent. That was our metric of impact. Because also...
And you had even a number of people doing that.
Exactly. Because sometimes I've seen people like working on automation. I'm like, do you really want a squad to work on it for a month for saving 0.5 FTE? Like, what's your ROI? It's not worth it. Just do something else. So we had this first metric, which was FTE equivalent. That was our metric. It could be different for... So, and we had certain processes, for example, at that moment where we knew there were high FTE equivalent. We knew that they will make a big impact. We just couldn't automate it. Like there was no way, because there was no API call available, especially with certain provider. And now in the LLM part, we can go back at it and say, okay,
Now we can.
that one, there was no API endpoint available, but I don't need an API endpoint anymore. I can just have an AI operator doing that. And generally, just to finish on this long rant, the biggest thing I have seen on automation post LLM is the mistake is to try to do 100%. What we have seen is actually using LLM is really good to improve the productivity by 40, 50, 80, 90%. It's really hard. We almost have no cases where it's end-to-end with no touch. That happened a lot with API, but with LLM, end-to-end no touch is still a bit tricky, but you can reduce it by 70, 80%. And if you have a high FTE equivalent impact, that's worth it.
Yeah. And we're talking, preparing for the interview, you mentioned something interesting because we were focusing on the impact of efficiency and AI on the customer support, customer onboarding part. But you also mentioned something interesting, KC, which was that you halted new features for quite a while.
Yes.
From the product team. Tell us a bit more about that and the dynamics between product sales, that balance.
So in 2023, so when we realized that it was important that we become master of our own destiny and we can be cash flow positive, and to be cash flow positive, you need high gross margin. In order to do that, you have to make a sacrifice somewhere. Because when you work on automation, the R&D, the builders, as we call them, our research and development, or product and engineering, that work on automation are not going to work on new features. So we literally basically not develop almost any new feature for an entire year. Did that make the revenue team, so sales and marketing, really happy? No, not really. But everybody understood that this was necessary for the long-term future of the company. And I think there is a TravelPerk, and I hope it will continue, a level of trust in the leadership that even when we take very unpopular decision like this one, people are like, yeah, that makes sense. And it turned out.
We'll wait and see because they are usually right. So
yeah, they were like, oh, is it going to be painful? Yes, of course. Like, I'm a salesperson. I want to be able to have a shiny new things. And we were working on things that honestly had very little value often to the customer, but they were imperative. But again, at the other side of it, end of 2023, 75% gross margin, we can raise more money, we can go back, invest in feature, acquire company, and then the story continues. And I think what was important here was the decisiveness. And we're like, this is the most important thing we're going to do. We are not trying to run by consensus. A company is not a democracy. And if that's what we feel is the most important thing, we're going to explain it, But ultimately, that's what we're going to do. And we have had enough goodwill before that the team followed us.
You mentioned now decision-making process, and this one thing that I'm obsessed about is how you manage the disagree and commit in a company like this. Well, I mean, of course, it's not a democracy, but at some point, there needs to be attention to discussion. There are hard discussions, hard decisions that are made. So when somebody in the executive team disagrees with somebody else, how do you manage that? And what happens then when you take a decision and you have to commit into that?
So I think there are two layers. The first one is, I think the disagree and commit is something where we are very explicit about it. Anytime we onboard somebody new to the exec team or even extended leadership team, we make sure everybody understand that this is the rule of the game. Like it's part of the game. It's disagree and commit. We can discuss, but once the decision is being made in that room, you can argue whatever you want. When you are out of that room, the decision that has been made here, that's the one you represent, no matter if you agree with it or not. The second side of it is very openly is if anybody get to a point where they feel they can't disagree and commit, they cannot stay. Like you have to disagree and commit. You have to. It's not an option. If you feel this is touching you so much on something you believe so much on that you can't live without it, then you cannot stay. Like the company is bigger than anybody's decision. I think that's one part. Then what is important in the process of the disagree and commit, though, is we will spend quite a lot of time exploring the topic in all different aspects so that
Giving the chance to people to really express.
exactly, really, really express it, really explain it. But also, just to finish on that part, like there is a certain virtue to make it very clear to the company that we are not trying to drive consensus. Less in the leadership team, more in the extended leadership team. And so people also get used to that style. They are like, okay, like, I mean, probably talk about it after when we acquire an expense management company, like that took some people by surprise. We explain the logic and the very large majority of people are on board. But even those that are not on board know that they have to be on board because it's not decision by consensus. It's like, this is the strategic logic of it. There's one last thing. The one thing we do a lot, we did it, for example, at Kickoff recently with all our organization, is we always, and I feel that's the other side, if you want disagree and commit to work, is we explain the why behind all the decision. And I will do like, when we do the expense management, I don't remember how many Q&A sessions I've done. I have done like 20 Q&A sessions with every single group possible. The product team, with the revenue team, with the company we acquire, with everybody, with leadership team. And I was like, I want you to challenge me. It's like, go. Like, I want you to express the why. You might disagree, but I want you to understand how I came to that decision. Why we ended up making that decision. I think that's the flip side is, if you want is not driven by consensus, you need to explain the why. Otherwise, that look a bit autocratic.
Yeah. You mentioned that in the onboarding phase of the exec team and the extended leadership team, that you talk a lot about the disagree, commit, and some other culture traits. What are the other key traits of TravelPerk?
Which I
Not consensus driven.
Yeah, so one that actually kind of go with the disagree and commit is first principle thinking. We do not want people to come with playbook. We want people to come with experiences and they will adapt it to the situation. Anybody that tried to come with a playbook and say, that is how it should be done, that didn't go well. Never. Because we don't believe in that. We don't believe because you don't, and also you don't create an exceptional company by copying. You create an exceptional company by looking down at any problem you look at and look at the entire ecosystem because everything is subtle. So where the company is located, the type of employee you have, the type of product you have influence any decision. So you can't just apply a playbook to it. So that is really important, is first principle thinking. And that's something we extend to the entire organization is everybody in the organization always have the right, and I would say the duty, to examine the decision-making process of anybody else. Like you can't go somewhere and say, I think we should do that. Why? No, because that's just how Google or Meta are doing it. I was like, no, I mean, I don't care that's Google and Meta are doing it. It's like, can you explain why we should do it this way? Can you explain why we should have this compensation philosophy, why we should have this way of managing product roadmap, whatever the topic is. So I think that's one. The first principle thinking is one. The no kind of trying to go to consensus at all costs is the second one. And the third one is really to understand that the leadership team, so especially the exec of the leadership team.
How big is the leadership team?
7 people. Is the primary team. So whilst we all have generally a functional role, managing product, managing revenue, managing finance, managing people team, when we meet as a leadership team, we are one entity. What you are taking care of shouldn't influence your decision-making process. Because otherwise you end up in this kind of silo / chapel battle of like, I'm going to fight to get more salespeople. I'm going to fight to get more engineer. And that's something we're like, no, the first team is the leadership team. And as a consequence, we think about what's great for the company. And sometimes you go back to your team, again, to go back to the example of 2023, And at that time, I was actually the chief revenue officer. So I was on the bad side of the fence. And I was like, yeah, that's the right decision. And that was incredibly painful for me, insanely painful. I had to go back to my team and say, we're going to basically have no new feature for the entire year. So good luck, guys. But again, that's the right decision.
I agree. But I agree with this, right?
They follow it. But we explained the logic behind it, but it didn't matter if it was impacting me as the CRO at the time negatively. It was the right decision for the company.
Yeah. But preparing for this, I talked to Hughes later.
Oh,
and last week, who obviously you knew. You actually put a nice post about him. Very rare.
it's an amazing human.
And something that while he was here, you were a big advocate of the do things that don't scale phrase from Paul Graham. And on the topic of efficiency, I mean, how do you try to maintain the scrappiness of the team while looking for efficiency, but also giving freedom for them to try new stuff and to, I mean, how do you balance those two?
It's you. Yeah, I love the do things that don't scale. What kill innovation when you get to a certain size is people already envision about how is that going to scale. And you want to give them the freedom, say, just chill, buddy. You'll deal with that later. Like, if I will have thought about how things are going to scale, most of the things we have done, we'll have never done them because we didn't know how they will scale. Literally, we didn't know. Like, we work at below 30% gross margin for 6 years before we figure out that automation could solve it. But we were like, okay, as long as we get volume and we get good revenue, it's going to work. And so I think there's a lot of things at the beginning where you need to accept to do them. And then when it gets traction, and I think that's the important part, is often companies like overthink it before things get traction. I remember like seeing that in another company where they are already overthinking about, how can we scale our reseller channel and how is it going to work? It's like, you have no reseller. So get reseller,
One reseller.
get them to sell, and then you can decide one day, okay, maybe we need to think about how we scale it. Maybe we need to think about how do you select reseller or how we automate. But let's get traction first. And I think that is the point where I've chatted a lot with you is like, you want to see traction. You want to see the momentum, especially when it's customer driven. Because if you have good momentum from especially customer driven momentum, most things get solved. Honestly, like most things, you can solve it one way or another. Like it's pretty rare that you end up with something that has had really good customer traction and you are like, no, we really have to stop it because it doesn't scale. Genuinely, you find it is much easier to automate than it is to create traction. That is the key point. So get the traction first. Don't worry about the scale. But then also recognize the moment where you need to scale it. It's like, okay, this is good. This is not good. I finished on one stuff on this. But actually, I did that so we onboarded a new chief revenue officer. So I was chief revenue for the longest time at TravelPerk before I took my job at president COO. And I was like, okay, how can I help wonderful new chief revenue officer? He asked me, how can I help her? So I like, traditional onboarding. And then one day I was on a plane, actually. I started to write all the things that didn't work at TravelPerk that we tested. I ended up writing this literally 50 pages documents of every single, it's called the 1001 things we failed at.
Book for when you retire.
It's a good book. Some stuff I don't think I'm ready to be public yet. But the one thing that was interesting was to explain. What was interesting for me was to try to figure out, going back to first principle thinking, the deep why they didn't work. Did they not work because it was the wrong time? Or was there something really fundamental about why this didn't work? And she can try it again, but I don't think it will ever work. And it was really interesting to go through that because there are a few innovations that became completely life-changing at TravelPerk, like FlexiPerk, which is one of our big innovations. But we don't talk about the other 10 that we just had to bin because they were just really bad. And it was, but that's okay because we tried it. They didn't get enough traction or they didn't scale. Okay, fine, move on.
You mentioned something very interesting, which in a way merges two concepts here: the culture that we're talking about and the scale, and the voice of history, right? I mean, understanding where the company is coming from, where the company is going. If you don't write it down, it's only in your head, right? And I think you joined when you were 20, right? So, but now it's what 1,500 people
Yeah, it's probably almost 2,000 now. It's like, yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
So, in that process of growing so much, how do you scale the culture? And of course, there are some rights that have been created, some myths that have been created for the past, the stories. How do you transmit those stories so that everybody knows what it means to be part of this organization? Are you writing these things down somewhere as a company?
Not as much as we should.
So you think it's important to write these things down?
I think it's really important to write things down. We try to do it through a couple of like artifacts as well. So the onboarding is an artifact. So the way we do onboarding is it's not only your traditional onboarding, like here's your HR system, here is the people, here's the gym. Like it's Avi, our founder, will have a session. Our CFO will have a session.
Imprint.
It's an imprint of what's the culture of the company, what's the strategy of the company. That is one side.
Everybody together, because it's happening today.
Yes, exactly. That is really important. So we do that typically once a month, and it's everybody together from a 21-year-old customer care agent to the new CFO. No matter the role, you get the exact same 1 week onboarding. So that's kind of a way to create culture, and also it creates link. It's really funny actually. You meet a lot of people like, oh, how you guys are friends? Like, oh, we started together. Because remember at school, when you start on the first day, you sit next to somebody, you don't know anybody, you're a bit like, and you bond because you don't know anybody. So I think that's one.
Yeah.
And then we have our annual kickoff, and our annual kickoff is the same. Physical one is, we don't do like, there is barely any number in our kickoff. Like literally, we don't do like this, well, this is the number, this is the performance, that's the president's club. None of this. It's all about going back to board. It's all about explaining the why, explaining the first principle thinking. Because if you want this to be deeply in the culture of the company, first principle thinking, always explain the why, do things that don't scale, you want to use any moment where you have all the audience to show it, to show this is how we operate, this is what we value. Because often I feel like a lot of companies misuse their big opportunity of annual kickoff or end of quarter, and they just bombard people with numbers. Who cares?
Yeah.
This is for your board. It's not for people. Just don't bombard them with your P&L. Nobody's inspired by a P&L. It's not that. And people are inspired by stories. They are inspired by understanding how what they do fit to the strategy of the company. So we do provide the number, like we're very transparent, but we don't do that at kickoff. We literally do that offline, actually, on printed document, because like you want to know the document, like first of all, it's available to anybody online and that work at TravelPerk. And two, we sometimes summarize it in a document, but that's not how you build the culture. So to your point, it's like one of the ways you keep the culture is first, of course, you show it every day, but you use your big kind of artifact moment of culture to reinforce the message. And we have seen it because the few times we have not done that, we have strayed away from that, there was an immediate reaction from the company. They were like, oh, what are you doing this? Like, what is that? It does happen, and immediately we knew that we were going the wrong way.
Thinking out loud, even that book that you have there in your head, that written out in a way that could be digested by the organization is a very interesting artifact, right?
Yeah, which is
just scaling the stories, how it happened, what we learned. So these kind of things could be very interesting to do.
I know. I have that in my mind. Nobody, my leadership team knows this one, and actually I was chatting with Avi, and Avi is like, you should share that with everybody. I'm like, okay, we need to edit because I wrote it only for me. So there are certain things that might need to be redacted a little bit before being shared.
So good. JC, going back to the topic of growth, I mean, we've talked a lot about organic growth, but I think something that you guys have been doing quite a lot in the past few years is inorganic growth and M&A. And I mean, looking from the outside, it seems like there's two types of M&As that you guys are doing. One is geo expansion, US and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And then more recently with Yokoi, the revenue, the expense management solutions and all that kind of stuff. Talk about how you guys are thinking about M&A and also executing that, which is always tricky.
Yes. So let's start by the geo expansion side of it. So there are a lot of people who do business travel in the world, a lot of travel agency, but M&A fail most of the time because you try to integrate culture and people who are just not ready to be integrated. So one of the first principles we had for every M&A that was geo expansion was always, we will only do acquisition of tech-driven company. So both Click Travel and Amtrav were tech company first.
Going back to the gross margin.
Going back to the gross margin and also going back to the ethos of people. It's like when you integrate the people from Click or Amtrav, they feel at home here. They are software engineers, they are used to automation. And it's no disrespect to traditional travel agency who tend to be more white glove service, but it's different. They will come here when we talk a bit about automation before, if you work in tech, automation is being perceived as being great because it allows you to do more. When you talk about automation, when it's a service-based company, it's not being perceived the same way. So I think that was the first one. So the second thing on M&A is the key thing on M&A is build long-term relationship. For both Click and Amtrav, and same even for Yokoi, the acquisition recently, I have been meeting the CEO for probably 4 or 5 years before we made the offer to acquire them. Because I knew them, they knew us, I knew there was a compatibility of culture. No disrespect to bankers and people who do that, but I don't believe in it. Every time I see an opportunity being presented by a banker and I don't know about it, I'm like, no. Like it's
to be chemistry with
that. No. And it might be different if you're a private equity and you do roll up and so on. Like, well, I'm not running a private equity. I'm running a real company with real humans. And so I want to have this culture, this understanding about the company, the vision, the founders, and that you can only get it by building it over time.
Yeah.
So inorganic on travel has been really important for us to develop strong foothold in certain countries, especially. Expense management is completely different. That was the first time we went really very clearly outside of travel. We have realized over the past, especially last year, but the past 2 years, that in the next 5 years, only companies who have integrated travel and expense will pass the test of time.
How did that realization come to you?
Customer feedback, first and foremost, frankly. And also, we realized objectively it was just better. So again, going back to first principle, is like, okay, you start getting customer feedback and then you start digging and you dig and you are like, yeah, they are right. It is much better. It is an actually better experience for the traveler, for the CFO. And then it happened to also make a lot of sense for the company because you basically have one cost of acquisition and you double your revenue per customer. So it just makes sense. And it's also one of the things that we do a lot to go back is we don't like playbook, but we also look at comparable. And if you think about what has happened, for example, in HR, same story. In HR, now almost any HR system does payroll as well. There are very few companies that will just do payroll or just do HR. It's very difficult to justify. And so it's the normal trend. So once we decided that we need an expense management platform, then same story. We map the market. We look at who we knew already. We look at who made the most sense in terms of technology and people. And Yokoi was the obvious choice for us. But again, we have known them for 5 years. So the moment I literally called the founder of the company, Phil. And there was no banker, there was no VC. It was me WhatsApping Phil and say, "Hey Phil, you have a half an hour? I wanna run something to tell. I want to run something by you." Literally, that was that. I was like, "We are thinking of doing that. Will you be interested of being part of the process?" And that's it's a completely different dynamic.
Yeah.
Completely different dynamic than running a process.
So you touched on product expansion and adding new product lines, which makes total sense. But you're now in a kind of a dramatic inflection point, I would say. I mean, with the AI agents coming to the world, and my feeling is that SaaS will not be dead, but it will need to evolve, right? I mean, now probably everybody's going to add a Copilot, and that's it. That's an easy. Everybody's going to do better, do more revenues. It's going to be easier. So Copilots make total sense right now, and you tell us about that in a second. Then at some point, we're going to have this agent invasion, right? That agents are going to be able to do the work of the human with the operator style that you mentioned before. And at some point, and that's my bet, and you tell me, we're going to reach software invisibility. That somehow, I don't know, the APIs are going to talk to APIs or agent to agent, and then TravelPerk will not be seen in the outside, but it will happen underneath. So what do you think is going to happen with your industry and others around this?
I fully agree with you on this part. I would start by the last one because I think that's the most important, is the thing that will be the first and the most disrupted actually by AI operator is user interfaces. Again, if you think I'm just going to use the example of our software and our domain is the job to be done of booking a flight, a hotel, and having all the expenses. If you decompose it, is you need a human to choose the right flight that is in accordance to the policy of the company. Then you need to pay for your flight. Then the ticket need to be issued. Then you need all the amenities that have for it. You as a traveler needs to receive it. I need to send the information to the airline, to the hotel, and so on. What AI operator will do, I don't know when, but probably in a very foreseeable future, is the process of you selecting your flights through a user interface. That's probably going to be disrupted sooner or later. Because it will make sense that you say, I'm going to London to visit that company, book me a flight and a hotel according to my normal preferences.
From point and click to prompt and done, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that part, but the user interface is a tiny, tiny, tiny part of what we do. So it's like less than 5% of what we do. Most of the hard part of what we do is the fulfillment. It's like, how do you make sure the tickets are being issued? How do you make sure they are being issued at the right price? How do you package them properly? How do you send this information to an ERP system, to SAP, to Microsoft, to NetSuite? So all this back office still need to happen. And that there is no operator to do it. Like this is a lot of like connectivity, integration, customization, because every job to be done is different. And I think that's the key. That's why we believe in it, is because what we try to build is an entire end-to-end platform in the background. How you are interacting with this platform, whether you're interacting through a visual user interface or through a master AI operator or through a custom-made travel operator, if I had to make a prediction on this, is I think we're going to go over the next 5 years in a situation where we're going to have a lot of cases where you will support multi-interface in parallel. Is that certain people will already feel very comfortable with prompting, and they will be like, book me. Some people will be like, no, I still prefer the visual interface. And some people will be even at the extreme, which is, I have a master AI operator to your agent. And I think company like ours, what the value, the moat is what you build in the background. But what you need to do is to be ready to ingest the information from any of these sources. Because I think that transition is actually going to be quite long. It's going to depend on job to be done. It's going to depend on industry. That's going to take a while. It depends also on how sensitive is the information. If you have a very non-sensitive information, you're more likely to use an AI operator. If it's a highly sensitive information, like for example, posting information to an ERP system or an accounting system, API is still superior to AI operator today because there is a notion of reliability that most AI don't have yet.
You were also mentioning the fact that there's companies also moving to the city, not just being born in the city. You were talking about Preply, right?
Yeah, so Preply is a good example of company moving here. And that's really good because it just creates a better ecosystem. Like you want people to be able to move from company to company. You want to have this very rich ecosystem because that benefits everybody. So I think that has been for me the biggest change in Barcelona. By an order of magnitude is because Barcelona was always a really good place to have young talent. Okay, always. Young international talent. People want to live here. That was always good. But what was really problematic before is you didn't have multi-generation. If you were in Barcelona, most people were relocating here, whereas now you get actually movement between the different kind of big tech and the people. And I love that. I've had people who were at TravelPerk for 5, 6, 7 years, and they were like, I want to go back to something a bit more early stage. And they can stay here. They don't need to leave. And that I honestly really hope is going to be the case. Do a small parenthesis on this. I lived in New Zealand for 6, 7 years. And in New Zealand, there was 2 big scale-up. Xero, accounting software, and Vend, my previous company, sold to Lightspeed. Very similar to Barcelona. The problem in New Zealand is they never got the second generation. Because what happened is the people who were part of these 2 companies, they all left. There was no second generation. You went from that to now they are starting to have a few of them. Actually, most of them are ex-alumni, like Aurore is a good example of it. They are all ex-alumni of Venn and Xero, but they have really struggled to create this second generation. So I think what I really hope will happen is that the nice scale-up we have here, we are here to stay, but we will have this second generation that kick us a little bit in the future.
Of course, Barcelona is improving dramatically in the last 10 years, much more senior talent. But you mentioned something earlier, which I think is very interesting, is that you cannot just have everybody in the same place as a new level because you need to tap into the talent, whatever it is. And at some point, there is not enough there, right? So tell us more about this idea of in TravelPerk that you have one center of decision, which is here, Barcelona, another one in London. Yeah, so having another one in a place where you can tap into talent, but not having 10 different ones. Right? What is the balance there?
Exactly. So I think what happens is when you reach a certain size, there are certain functions that are hyper specialized where you need people who have kind of seen it, done it. You want a VP controller for your finance team who has managed a $200 million software company. Fortunately, really hard to find here. You want a VP marketing who has managed a $100 million budget. Again, very hard to find here. So there are multiple approaches. By design, we are not a company that allows remote, so that was not an option for us. We are very much an in-person company. What I have seen, which personally I've rarely seen it being successful, is to do it ad hoc. I cannot find a chief revenue officer that has managed 200 salespeople. I find this chief revenue officer, he or she is based in Austin, Texas. I have no office in Austin, Texas. I'm going to recruit this person. It just doesn't work, ever. Like, it just doesn't. Unless you're a remote first company and then it can work, it just doesn't. So actually quite early in 2021, 2022 especially, when we really started to be post-COVID scaling, we were like, okay, we're going to make the deliberate decision that London and Barcelona could be used interchangeably for C-level, exec, and senior director position. Not below. To be clear, like we have about 800 people here. We have about 80 in London. That's the order of magnitude. So we're not trying to have 2 headquarters. We are trying to have the high density of very senior people in London. And we pick London.
This is Barcelona.
No, but London office is actually quite cool as well. But this was very, very deliberate. And we could have, and it's not to say we chose London, probably could have chosen So we have an office in Berlin, but for example, that's not how we use Berlin. Berlin is only used for specifically like go-to-market. Same in the US. US is used for go-to-market. Like London is used specifically to be a second, basically, exec center.
And they need to be close enough. I mean, this idea is important. I mean, you're a bit too far away.
Exactly. That's part of this. That was part of the decision-making process for us. And it's less the closeness help because it's a very easy flight, but it's the time zone. Time zone is the killer. Time zone is more the killer than distance, honestly. It's like time zone creates misunderstanding. Like as much as we can say the opposite, and that's why for us we are okay. We work really well, and it's an hour flight. So I keep going to London. London people keep coming here. Like we fly non-stop between the two. Like I don't know how many hundreds of flights we do a year between London and Barcelona.
I mean, probably in the last set of questions, but I mean, now as COO, you are the owner of the operating system of the company, right? I mean, you need to make sure, and you talk a bit about this, the whole meeting about the flags, the offices, how things work and flow. I think sense of urgency is critical for a company, right? And the cadence is critical to make this happen. So how do you manage the cadence or the artifacts for the cadence in the company? What do you do? I mean, do you have weekly meetings? You have the people traveling to work? You mentioned the yearly meeting, but tell us more about the cadence of the company.
So we have 4 big cadets. So the first one is annual kickoff. Annual kickoff, entire company, done in 3 main locations. So UK, Barcelona, and the US. So everybody fly to one of these 3 locations. It's a huge production. Like it's a big production. And this is big investment. And we spend like hundreds of hours fine-tuning every single piece of content. We do like in-person rehearsal. We bring a public speaking coach. Like it's because we as exec, like we are in an hour and a half, we want to explain the entire company strategy of the company. So it needs to be crystal clear. This is the moment where you develop sense of belonging, where you develop really this, wow, I'm proud to work for this company and I know where they are going. That's what you want people to come out of it. That's one. Then the second artifact we have is once a quarter, we have end of quarter meeting. This one is progress on the strategy and reporting on the numbers.
Company-wide.
Here we don't ask people to fly everywhere. They can stay in their office, but it's really important. So 45 minutes. This is how we are doing. This is how we are progressing against our key strategy. That's the second artifact. The third artifact is end of week meeting every 2 weeks. This one is a bit more fun. So it's like, hey, here are the big projects we do. These are the new people who join the company.
Town hall.
It's like a town hall. It's every 2 weeks. This one is more fun. It's more casual. It's more loose. You have drinks after. This one is like way more about culture. Like the first 2 are really about strategy. This one is much more about culture. The last artifact that we have, which is more an artifact of efficiency, is once a month, we have what we call sit-rep meeting. So it's a meeting of metrics. So all the key metrics of the company are being reviewed during this meeting. So key metrics go from your pipeline to your revenue to, in our case, your take rate, so how much money you make from the volume you transact.
So this is company-wide?
No. On that one, we only have the owner of each metric. So it's about 20 people more or less in the meeting. And we do not talk about the metrics. We talk about any divergence to the metric. So people prepare, so the metrics are automated in a dashboard, so there is no work to be done. And the only thing we talk about is when it diverges from it. And again, it goes from not only the revenue, because generally company only do, most company we do, no, it's not only that. It's going to be, for example, we need to recruit 20 software engineers this quarter. How are we doing? Are we on track? Are we not on track? If we are not on track, why are we not on track? Metric of quality. How many sold out? We need bugs, to make it simple. Do we have? Oh, we are going above the 1% line. Why are we going above the 1% line? And so that one is really important because it helps us catch things. And of course, you're correct, really fast. It's like, and it's generally a symptom. So you will see something and you will be like, why is that going sideways? It's like, you have, I don't know, the NPS of the German market, which is something that has happened recently. You went sideways and we're like, weird. Can somebody look into it? And we realized we had a connectivity issue with Lufthansa that we didn't figure out for 2 weeks. If we didn't have this meeting, we'll have figured it out ultimately, but it might have taken us 3 months. And so that meeting is extraordinarily important to have, to your point, this sense of urgency, to have this cadence where, but the key point of this meeting, and I cannot emphasize it enough, and I'm known to not be very happy when this happens. This is not a meeting where people show off. You're not here to receive kudos because your number is good. It's like, that's not what this meeting is about. So when I've had people say, oh, I've done that, I was like, I don't care. Your metric is on track. We move on to the next topic. It's like, it is not, there is a place and time for me to give you kudos.
Yeah.
We are reviewing in an hour every single metric of the company. I do not have the time to do that right now. We're going to go diverge. By the way, we do divergence up as well. So you want to do divergence down, but you want sometimes to do divergence up. It's like, wow, why is that going so well? Because to the point I was making before, like, something going well means there is traction. If there is traction, it's an opportunity to double up or make it more efficient. So we realized, wow, that market is really taking off. Why is it taking off? Is it just a fluke or is there something? And so that meeting generally cascades a lot of work to be done by the different teams. And then we meet again 1 month later, and then we make sure that any single topic that has been addressed has been fully solved during the month.
Cool. Last question, JC. How do you keep learning? Because you mentioned before you started as CRO. Well, maybe you started with something else, CRO, COO, president. How do you keep learning, keep being motivated, stay sane, and not go crazy with the job?
Actually, so I will do the 2 part of it. I will start with the stay sane part of it, and then I will move to the keep learning. I really, really, really believe in treating your kind of energy and your body like an athlete. So I will measure my sleep. I will work out almost every day. I will be extraordinarily strict with what I eat, because that type of job takes so much energy from you. Again, no disrespect to people who do that, but if you try to be literally a C-level in one of the biggest tech company ever created in Europe, no, you have to be careful with your time. You have to be careful with your energy because you need to be on point. I open and close a quick parenthesis. So when I was younger, I play a lot of chess. I was a chess champion when I was younger. And one of the things I have learned, so chess is beautiful because it's so pure intellect that it makes you realize the impact on things on your intellect. And I remember how much impact it had on my performance when I was not sleeping well. And I always kept that in my mind because if it happened in chess, the same happened in business. I need to be sharp. So I think that's one side. The keep learning side of it, I think for me, there are 2 sides. One is work with the smartest people you can and try to see what superpower they have and just be very curious about their superpower. Like almost every single smart person you will work with at C-level has one or multiple superpower. And you want to dig with them and say, what's your superpower? Oh, superpower is you're incredible at negotiating. I'm going to grill you and I'm going to try to absorb as much as I can of your superpower. That's one side. And the second side is just, very much like food, is your brain and your thinking process is as good as what you ingest. So listen to great podcasts, read great books. I mean, if you read mass media or an interesting book or an interesting podcast, what do you think your brain is going to look like? You're only as good as what you put in. So there are a lot of really good podcasts and really good books out there, and it's already available. So
Cool. Thanks, JC.
thank you so much. I love the discussion with you.